Hi everybody. I am Carol Kaufman, the founder of the Institute of Coaching with Margaret Moore and Susan David, Senior Leadership Advisor at Egon Zender. And in part, thanks to Marshall Goldsmith, we'll be publishing my very first book in February 2023 with David Noble called Real Time Leadership. Marshall himself needs no introduction. However, I always have to bother him by reminding everyone that he has a PhD, is a great behavioral psychologist, has a degree in mathematics, and doesn't seem to feature all of these things. And he's a wonderful guest, generous person, extremely generous, and the author of his newest book, The Earned Life. So Marshall, why don't you start us off by sharing what is at the heart of the earned life?
Well, to me, the heart of the earned life is our ongoing drama between our aspirations, that higher purpose that we have that really doesn't have a finish line, our ambitions, which are goals that we want to achieve that do have a finish line, and then our actions, which are day-to-day activities. And one of the most powerful parts of the book is talking about how those need to be aligned as we journey through life. And historically, most people in our history, our ancestors, lived in the day-to-day activity phase. They did what they were told. They didn't have a lot of choices. And most of them were very poor people, and they just did what they had to do every day. Some people live up in their heads, they're more the academic, maybe. They don't do much, but they have a lot of lofty thoughts. The people that you and I deal with every day, though, are really people who are focused on their ambitions and a goal achievement. They are achieveaholics. And a lot of the book talks about the challenges of people who achieve and some of the myths of achievement. I think one of the most important points in the book is really the point of never make your self-worth based on results. It's a fool's game for two reasons. One, you don't have total control over the results. And two, what happens if you do achieve the results? I mean, how long does that bring any satisfaction anyway? A week, a month? And, one of the people that endorsed the book is a great case study, Albert Bourla. Albert's a CO50. And, he nice enough to endorse the book. And I talked to him a few months ago. I said, Albert, how was your year last year? I said, oh, pretty good. Came up with that vaccine, saved 1 billion lives. That's pretty impressive. And then we had stocks an all-time high and employee engagements through the roof and wrote a book and CEO of the year, blah, blah, blah. I said, Albert, fantastic. What's your problem? He said, I have a huge problem next year. Next year. And the reality is, if Albert's value as a human being is he has to beat last year, he might as well pack it in. He's never going to beat last year. Mm-hmm. We don't even want him to beat last year. No, hopefully that's never going to happen again. And the odds on that happening to him are tiny. Well, it's important that we don't fixate on results as this is who I am as a human being. And then the final point on this is Safi Bakal's in our group. You met Safi. He probably has an IQ equal to, he's probably got an IQ equal to yours and mine put together. So anyway, Safi's a brilliant guy, the PhD in physics from Stanford. He wrote Loonshots. He's worth tens of millions of bucks. He started companies. He's consulted to presidents. And Safi said he finally realized, and he talks like a scientist, that happiness and achievement are independent variables, that you can achieve and be happy, and you can achieve and not be happy. You can achieve nothing and be happy, and achieve nothing and be miserable. And he said he always thought, if I achieve more, I will be happy. Well, at a certain level, Safi, that's insane. He's already at 99.999 on achievement now. What's he going to do? Get up to a 99.99999? You really think that's going to make any difference?
I have to interrupt you, wait, because I was on that call with Safi and you and the other CEOs the moment he got that, which was when that incredible NFL player was talking
Curtis Martin.
about Curtis. Why don't we take a minute tangent and talk about that? Because it was amazing I talked to Safi right after that call, and it was amazing to watch someone's life change in real time.
It was amazing. Just for context for people who are listening, my new book, The Earned Life, was largely based on Carol. I'm sure none of this book was much of a surprise to you. It was based on conversations I'd had in these LPR meetings with amazing people weekend after weekend after weekend. And just amazing. And Curtis Martin is the National Football League Hall of Fame, number 5 rusher. And Curtis always got high scores on being happy. And the great breakthrough for Safi is he realized, well, Curtis has achieved as much as I have, and he's always happy, and I'm not. Maybe there's something for me to learn here.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I recall, I think he talked to Curtis and said, how is it that you feel the way you do all the time? And
Yeah.
that clearly Curtis was able to take in his life
Yeah.
in a way that Safi really believed that he couldn't be happy now.
Yeah.
So guys, one thing, LPR, there's an earlier LinkedIn with Marshall on this from last year. LPR stands for Life Plan Review. A bit of that is described in the Earned Life, but different groups of us met once a week and really talked about our goals that made sure they were purpose driven. And then that weekly calls is what this was based on.
Yeah, well, it's been an amazing experience. We put in about 500 hours on it, so it's a lot of time.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
learned a lot.
my article, my HBR article and book came from those meetings where you and Mark Thompson sort of nagged me to live up to what I said I was going to do and hadn't done. But
That's
okay,
good.
back to the Earned Life. Another part of it you talk about is that overweighting between action in the day, ambition, and aspiration. Want to share that with our people?
Well, yeah, and if you look at it, you think about aspiration. How could you overweight that? Well, a lot of people do. There are a lot of people just lost in their heads. They talk about idealistic things. They babble on about social justice and actually do zero to impact the world. So they kind of overweight this macro dimension. And by the way, a lot of human services people love humanity, but just hate human beings.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, unfortunately, not that uncommon. They're self-righteous twits that, they love humanity, but they're just obnoxious to be around and don't like humans. And they're self-righteous and judgmental all the time. So what happens is they overweight this high end, and then they forget about the achievement, and they forget about the people in the day-to-day life. Again, most people overweight action. And if you look at it, this is something that took me years to understand. That is, why would anybody play slot machines? I mean, I could understand most addiction. I can understand drug addiction, alcohol addiction, sex addiction, work addiction. I could never understand somebody playing a slot machine. It just seems so idiotic to me. But then I finally realized they just have a different time horizon. If you're sitting at that machine, you've got these coins. What is probably the highest return on investment if your goal is return on investment for 5 minutes? Put the money in the machine. And really, they're just operating from a different time horizon. So they're overweighting the short-term action as opposed to the longer term. You and I have PhDs, so we're used to delayed gratification. Now, another thing I love, one of my favorite parts of the book is the marshmallow study and, eating the marshmallow. So high achievers tend to be focused on delayed gratification. And the famous marshmallow research at Stanford, they take this kid and give him a marshmallow. You say to the kid, well, if you eat one, you get one. But if you wait, you get two. So the kid waits and eats two. Well, according to their longitudinal study, the kids that ate one all become drug addicts, and the kids that eat two all get PhDs from Harvard. Something along those lines. But it was a clear message, delayed gratification is good. Well, delayed gratification does lead to increased achievement. That's a statement of the obvious. On the other hand, what they didn't do, they didn't take the kid that ate two. Say, wait, kid, a little longer. 3, 4, 5, 10, 100, 1,000. And where does the story end? An old man sitting in a room, waiting to die, surrounded by thousands of uneaten marshmallows.
Mm.
Sometimes,
that's not the earned life.
no, that's not the goal.
Yeah.
That is not the
Tell
goal.
Tell the Warren Buffett story.
Well, sometimes you need to eat the marshmallow. Oh, and then there's the Jack Welch coral.
Jack Welch. That was
So
you miss him.
Jack is, and he has this triple bypass, right? And he almost dies. And my friend Mark, who you've met, knows Jack Welch. So he says to him, well, what'd you learn about life when you almost died? And Jack Welch said, why am I drinking the damn cheap wine every night? So Jack Welch has this incredible wine collection, right? Beautiful wine. and he's letting it, quote, increase in value, which is insane. He finally realized, I'm Jack Welch. I'm worth hundreds of millions of dollars. This increase in value of wine is completely meaningless. And I almost died. And I'm drinking this damn cheap wine every night. What is wrong with me? No. And he made one commitment: no more cheap wine for me.
But that's that. On one hand, it's really very deep truth of how do each of us find that balance between our everyday action, answering
Right.
the email, dot dot dot, achieving, and staying aligned with our aspirations. What advice can you give our coaches on we've got a client and we see an imbalance?
Yeah.
How do you help people with that?
Well, the first thing is, it depends what the issue is, but let's assume the overweighting part is achievement, which tends to be very common. Well,
Mm.
if the overweighting part is achievement, I'd say, number one, why are you achieving this?
Hmm.
That aspiration is the answer to the question, why? Okay, you're working 80 hours a week. That's nice. Is there a reason for this? And are you in touch with the deeper reason of why you're doing this in the first place? Number one. And
Mm.
then number two, are you enjoying the process of life? Because, my research kind of indicates we're all going to be equally dead here. Last time I checked, we're all going to be equally dead. And you have a choice, enjoy life or not. Well, if you don't enjoy it, you're going to have regret. You're going to look back at your life and say, what's that all about? Well, are you enjoying the process of life? Are you enjoying the journey of life? And if the answer is no to either of those questions, either you're not connected to a higher meaning or you're not enjoying the journey of life, you've got problems. Now, Kelly, my daughter Kelly, very proud of my daughter Kelly, who today, well, just got an announcement she's going to be a chaired professor at Vanderbilt already. So daddy's quite proud. So
Wow.
anyway, yeah, daddy's very proud. So Kelly does some research with me on this stuff. And what she finds out is that if you look at life, if our work is connected to a higher meaning, that's great. If we enjoy the process, that's great. The reality is, to have a great life, though, you need both, and you need them both simultaneously. And the more hours we can spend doing one, something, we're achieving something that, number one, is connected to a higher purpose, but number two, we enjoy doing it. That's
Mm.
about it. I mean, assuming that you're healthy, assuming you have a middle class income, and assuming that you have good relationship with people you love, that's all there is. Basically, I have a higher aspiration that's important to me. I'm achieving stuff that's connected to that, and I enjoy the process.
Mhm.
If the answer is yes, yes, and yes, you just won.
So what do you do when people are less able to, when you say, well, why are you doing it? And they're less able to articulate that, because that's probably an issue a lot of our coaches will have. Can you give us a mentoring moment on how to help people connect to their aspirations?
I think let people struggle with it,
Mm.
because for many people, it is a struggle. That doesn't mean it shouldn't be a struggle. It shouldn't mean they shouldn't be doing it. I think it's healthy that they do it, because if we had a case of one gentleman I talk about in the book. I changed the names around on this one, but he said, and I was using my retiring CEO club meeting, which are, those things range from hilarious to tragic. He
Mm.
said, basically, I spent the last 40 years working 80 hours a week with one goal. So my children would not have to do that. And he said, in hindsight, it was the worst thing I could have done for myself or my children. They don't know me. My wife doesn't know me. I'm not happy. And they're not grateful. I just blew 40 years here. Well, that's what you don't want to have happen. You really want to focus on what is something that is going to produce long-term meaning in my life that I'm going to look back on and say, I'm proud of that. It made me feel happy. I'm glad I did it. And also, you enjoy doing it. See, I think you're very good at this. I think you have a higher aspiration of life. Two, I think you achieve a lot. And three, you enjoy the process. So I'd give you, well, people I know, I'd give you very high scores on this.
Although I was just talking about this with my coach today, I do feel like I enjoy the process of life and what I do, but I do feel like some of my wanting muscles have atrophied as I've been
Hmm.
writing this book, and I didn't even have time for a manicure for the past year.
Yeah.
And so how to help build that. So what kind of coaching do you do around someone to help them build that back up?
Now, I'm a little lost. Build back up. What is it? Was
The
lost?
sense of enjoying every day, finding fun, because you're great at that? How do you coach around
See,
that?
I think the key word is what you just said, every day. The Great Western Disease is I will be happy when, followed by get the money, BMW, write the book, have an achievement, blah, blah, blah. When? Well, as if there's this when, and once we get there, it's all going to be good. Well, there's one type of book that always has the same ending, and they lived happily ever after. Unfortunately, that is called a fairy tale. That's called a fairy tale. That's not the real world. There's no when. You don't get to someplace and all of a sudden you're happy for eternity. That's not real. Life is a constant series of reincarnations. And we're kind of, every time you take a breath, that's a big part of the book. Every time you take a breath, it's a new me. I'm a Buddhist, and people say, is Buddhist about reincarnation? To me, Buddhism is nothing but reincarnation. It's just constant reincarnation. That's all there is. So the Marshall at the end of this call and the Carol are different people than were there at the beginning. We're constantly changing. And I think just starting over, the hard thing for people in the West is, it's a very hard concept for Westerners to understand. We've been bombarded with happiness is out there. We've bombarded. Here's the great Western art form. There is a person. No, the person is sad. Ooh, they spend money. Ooh, they buy a product. Whoa, they become happy. This is called a commercial. How many of those have you seen in your life? How many of those have you seen? How many thousands?
We're marinated in it. We don't even know when we're seeing it.
Constantly we're bombarded with one message. Happiness is out there. And if you can only spend enough money, you can buy it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was listening to the Love in Action podcast of you, and I typically think I'm sort of above that. No, I know that. Well, just really hit me today that I am not. And I think just being really clear about, happiness is now, and really having an ideal and compassionate relationship with yourself while challenging yourself to find that balance.
That's it. And I think it's a constant restart process too. Because one of the things people will say to me is, well, does that mean I have to be happy every second? That's the opposite of what it means. You only have to be happy 1 second. Now, that's all.
Yeah.
That's
So,
it.
yes, because I think you contrast the earned life with the hollow life.
Yeah.
But another thing that I find really touching about your work is that the ultimate goal, maybe you could talk about that, the ultimate goal of what you do.
Yeah, it's just to help people have a little better life and the people around them have a little better life. And you have met many, many of my clients. And I would say the same thing. I just say, look, I'm trying to help you have a better life and help the people around you have a little better life. Now, so far, have you heard any of them object to that?
No.
None of them ever. Nobody ever raised their hand and said, that's a bad idea.
Yeah. But all the things you're talking about actually can help you do that. And for those of us coaching, we can actually help ourselves and our clients through our questions and connecting and having them align along these dimensions. They really will have better lives. I just find that very wise.
Well, one thing I've changed, and you've seen this over the years since we've known each other, is I used to be strictly in helping people change leadership behavior. And I still do that. And that's stakeholder-centered coaching. It's very valuable. You've met a lot of people I coach now. Half of them are billionaires. You've met those people on the calls. How many billionaires are on those calls? A bunch, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people I coach are billionaires. What am I supposed to do? Help them make 4.1 billion instead of 4 billion? Who cares, right? It doesn't matter. They don't need another $100 million. What they need is peace. They need to make peace with life. They need to be happy. That's what they need. They don't need an extra buck or two, and they don't need to achieve anymore. God knows they've achieved enough as it is.
Yes. Now, earlier, right before we were talking, you were sharing that you wanted to kind of talk about the earned life in the context of coaches and credibility and how they can be more empowered. Why don't you share some of your thoughts about that?
Now, I think this next thing, you and I talked about this, is especially important for coaches. Not all coaches. And by the way, Carol, this is not an issue I think you have. It's certainly not an issue I have.
I had it in the very beginning. I had it in the beginning.
You might have.
I don't have it now.
I don't think I ever had it.
Once a week myself.
I've got lots of problems and not one of them. I talk about the credibility matrix. And in the credibility matrix, I talk about two issues. One is our desire for approval, our need for approval. Now, I find this amazingly puzzling. We all have a huge need for approval. We don't get approval as humans. We don't survive. Our ancestors had a need for approval. Our survival has always been dependent upon approval. I did a Google search, need for approval in quotes. The first 500 hits, 450 talk about a psychological dysfunction. As if somehow when you need approval, you have a psychological dysfunction. No, you don't. When you need approval, you're a human being. All humans need approval. And so the key is two variables. One is called proving yourself, getting approval, and the other is called making a positive difference. And I talk about this credibility matrix. In my book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Most of the book is focused on people who do something I call overselling. They prove themselves too much. They win all the time. They have to win arguments. They have to prove how smart they are. They have to prove how right they are. And that whole book is largely about people who are in that quadrant. Trying to prove yourself when there's no point. It does more harm than good, and is getting them to quit proving themselves so much. With coaches, I find many have the opposite problem. They're in the underselling quadrant. They don't prove themselves enough. And they don't sell very well. They don't sell themselves enough. And, with coaches, I ask three questions typically. Question one, and everyone listening, I want you to answer these questions. Are we ready? Question one, if you became more influential, would the world be worse off or better off? Well, huge majority of coaches are saying better off. Two, does trying to become more influential make you uncomfortable? Does promoting yourself make you uncomfortable? A lot of coaches, yes. Question three, what is more important to you? Making the world a better place or being comfortable? Well, get over yourself.
Yeah. What I think of that is the absolute value of numbers only applied to ego. We all think of people as egotistic who are bragging and chest thumping and all that. That's a positive 10 on the ego side. But there's also negative 10, which is if I sell myself, someone's going to disapprove of me. And so it's still about the impact on others rather than trying to do that, align my action, my achievement, and my aspiration.
People that undersell, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, actually have two causes for this problem. One is they're too insecure. They don't believe in themselves enough. They don't promote themselves. It makes them uncomfortable. The second one is oddly enough too much ego. They have this ridiculous brief of my good work should speak for itself. I don't know if you ever heard that before. My good work should speak for itself. That is one of the most nonsensical things I've ever heard in my life. I'm going to help everybody. Your good work does not speak for itself. If that were true, no company would need a marketing function. That is just ridiculous. Your good work, nobody's going to jump up and down. Your good work doesn't talk, and so you got to be out there and be able to make sure your good work gets heard. And the question is not, is seeking approval a bad thing? Is, will the world be better off or worse off if I seek approval? If the answer is the world will be better off, do it. The answer is world will be worse off, don't do it. So it's not a good or bad thing. It's when do you do it and should you do it? And with coaches, they're the opposite of most of the people I coach are not coaches. And the coaches I work with, they have the opposite problem of a lot of people I coach. By the way, the people I coach are rich. Most people that are coaches are not rich. Why? They don't sell. They don't sell themselves. They don't charge enough money. They downplay their value and really need to focus on that area of, I want to really work on promoting myself. And it's not just to make money. It's you want to make the world a better place.
Well, I think of it as when you're wanting business, I think of it as you're selling coaching and it happens to be you. It could be someone else, but really feeling a lot freer selling the power of coaching. Right. But I wanted to respond to a couple of comments that I think people maybe are not quite understanding what you mean about making people happier. So Sami and a couple others talk about looking for balance is better than chasing happiness, which I think you actually agree with. But I'd love to just hear you differentiate
Well,
that.
to me, I'm going to give you my definition of what I mean by happy.
Good.
Now, I think a lot of people have guilt even talking about happiness. Martin Seligman, he talks about joy as if it's a downplayed product, that he doesn't like it very much. He defines happiness as meaning and a bunch of other crap thrown in, so he doesn't have to feel.
No.
Listening time.
Oh, sorry.
So,
Listen.
so anyway, I'm defining happiness in a very simple way: joy in the process of what you're doing. Period.
Okay.
It is not meaning. It is not achievement. It is joy in the process of what you're doing, period. That's it. So when I define happiness, I'm not saying that's the best definition. I'm just saying that's my definition. And my definition of happiness is joy in the process of what you're doing, which to me beats the hell out of lack of joy in the process of what you're doing.
Yeah. See, Marty is a self-proclaimed depressive. So he says he can't do that. So he goes to engagement, getting lost in what you're doing and meaning. And that's how the 3 paths to happiness began. I like your definition better.
What's that?
I like your definition better.
It's simple.
Like the idea of joy.
Here's how I differentiate happiness and meaning. Happiness to me, I'm defining it, and I don't mean it's the best definition, it's just my definition. Happiness is joy in the process of what you're doing. Meaning is the results of what you're doing matter to you. And both are important yet different. You can have one and not the other. You can have achievement and not have happiness or meaning, by the way.
Right, exactly. It's joy in the process of what you're doing, not in the outcome of what you're doing. So we were talking about that earlier, that a motto I had, which is I'm not in control of my destiny, but I am in control of my probabilities. So I'd like to share that. Yeah.
I love that. One thing that I quote you in the book, and one of the most important parts of the book is quoting you. And well, it really is. It is a big punchline in the book. And I do hopefully give you credit, is you came up with one thing. To me, I've read 400 books on Buddhism. And mindfulness training is a big deal. Spent 8 days on a mindfulness program. Carol Kaufman taught me something that if you understand what she taught me, it's better than 400 books of Buddhism and mindfulness training. You carry around a little card that has one question: am I being the person I want to be right now? And before you do anything, you look at that card. That is the best Buddhist advice I've ever heard from anyone at any time in my life. So thank you, Carol Kaufman. I talk about that in the book. People all love that. You've been our LPR group. They have it up on the walls. You've made such a positive impact on people with that one thought. That's been amazing. Skip the 400 books, by the way. Just do what Carol says. You can save a lot of time.
So what's an example for you when you had a moment and it's like, am I being the person I want to be right now? And it changed what you did or something. Can you think of an example?
Yeah, I think it is what we're talking about. When I started working with people, realizing I was trying to help them do something which was pretty good, it really wasn't what they needed. And really, I wasn't focused on what they needed. And I don't pretend to solve every need. I mean, I don't know about strategy, or I don't know about 99% of everything. On the other hand, I'm good at helping people change behavior. That one I've got figured out. But I realized that's not what they need. They really need to focus on meaning in life, joy in the process of life. It's much more important than helping them become more effective leaders, or certainly more important than helping them become higher achievers, since they're already so ridiculously high. Who cares?
Well, in our last minute, I just want to appreciate your wisdom. You've got lots and lots of your famous stories, but there's really a massive subtext of wisdom, which I love: the joy in the process of what you're doing and working with yourself and others to have just a better life. What's one thought then that you want to leave us with in our last minute?
As a thought for all the coaches listening, don't be too hard on yourself. don't be too hard. I think coaches are often too hard on themselves. Don't be too hard on yourself. Look, is the world better off or worse off because you're here? And I think the answer is a huge majority. It's better off. Are you helping people have a better life? In the huge majority, the answer is yes. Be proud of that. Be happy with that. And don't beat yourself over the head over what you're not doing. Just the world is better because you exist. The people you coach are largely better because you exist. Just be happy with that.
Thank you. And it's a challenge to do that every day, that habit of being okay with what you're doing. So I think we are out of time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.